Hello and welcome to the next in the series of the Döhle Yachts Coffee Breaks. Today we're going to be talking about life-saving appliance options on passenger yachts. We want to discuss today what your options are to comply with the regulatory framework and why certain options may be more attractive to the vessel that you're designing. I'm joined here today by Ben Geary, our Fleet Statutory Manager, and my name is Joe Assel and I'm the Technical Director here at Döhle Yachts. So Ben, passenger yachts, or if we're talking Red Ensign Group, we're talking Part B vessels here.
Yep.
Talk to me about what we do and don't need with respect to lifeboats.
I think the first point is to kind of highlight you straight to the table in Annex 1, so right at the back of the code, which kind of gives you a very simple idea of where lifeboats come into force. So you kind of got your standard of over 80 metres or under 80 metres, and then it's got looking at the number of people and obviously the different options that you have with your PY vessel. So yes, generally what we see is that lifeboats are required, but that table will give you a bit more definition.
Okay, great. Lifeboats are often also associated with the use of a rescue boat.
Yeah.
So do we always have to have a rescue boat on board as well?
Yes, so I suppose the difference between this Part B and Part A vessels is under Part A, less than 500 gross tonnes generally, they only have to have one rescue boat. So when you get over that, you go into 7.196, I think it is, which clearly highlights that you need 2 rescue boats. Okay, so that is something that you definitely need on board.
Okay, and that's going to be a big difference between a Part A or a large yacht, as you say, that often just has one rescue boat positioned somewhere on the bow.
Yeah.
And now we need to find space for 2, which is going to bring them further aft, maybe take in some guest space, higher value real estate on the side of the boat.
Yeah, and I think that's where also, we're looking at where they're moving. You've also then got the combination of the other question we get asked is, can you have MES systems? Can we have lifeboats? Can we get rid of lifeboats if we have MES systems? Generally, you have to have a combination. So you can do combination, and then it's pros and cons, which I think you'll talk about the space saving. So yes, you can have different options, but it's then kind of down to your design arrangement.
Yeah, I think that touches on a really important point about space. I mean, safety factors aside, once the decision has been made that we are having a Part B vessel, we need to comply with the annex. We know we need to have either a rescue boat, either a lifeboat, a MES system, davit launch, life rafts. It comes down to what combination of those is going to best suit the design and meet the needs of the owner. We can never get away, as you just mentioned, from having rescue boats. And also, once we've installed either the lifeboats or the MES, we also always need to have a portion of davit launch life rafts on board. So once we've got those portioned out, we then have to look at what remaining space we have for either an MES or for a lifeboat. Now, one of the interesting factors is that a lifeboat can also be certified as a rescue boat. So the LSA code is where we get those requirements from.
Yeah.
Now, if we combine our lifeboat and our rescue boat, then obviously the footprint required for the deck space is very much reduced. But we have to look at the practical operations of these, because obviously launching of a small rigid inflatable boat over the side is a lot easier than it is to launch a limo size tender lifeboat, and as a result it may be practical to launch it within the 5-minute time span. But is it actually going to be feasible for daily operations to have that type of boat going in and out of the water without potentially causing damage to either the boat itself or to the mothership, the yacht?
And what's interesting, I mean, even in your and my previous lives, when we started writing the PYC codes, the lifeboats that were available were not what we would call super yacht standard, interior-wise. What's really interesting is even in that short time the PYC has been about, is in the development of lifeboats as you've highlighted, a different option. So I suppose the question, what have you seen lifeboats turn into more and more? Is it rescue boats? Do we see them in tenders? How have you seen that play out?
Yeah, I mean, they take up so much space on the side of the boat in such an important location that if you can have your lifeboat perform another function as on top of just being a lifeboat, then it obviously means you're going to save space elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So if traditionally you would have your limo tender in your garage on your lower deck, if you now have your lifeboat also performing the function as your limo tender, you freed up space in your garage for either different toys, different functionality, or to claw that space back into a different function of the actual space itself. So we're often seeing, as you say, the standard of build has increased hugely over the last couple of years, and now limo tenders that can also be certified as a lifeboat are very popular. As I mentioned before, because of the difficulty with launching these types of very large, heavy boats on a dual beam crane, we find that although they can be certified as a rescue boat, it's not always the best option. And we're finding most designers are still pushing the location of rescue boats forward towards the bow, towards the crew areas. But we do have a problem with the final certification of these areas, because a passenger yacht, unlike a large yacht, has to perform a 5-knot tow test on its rescue boat. So that means that the mothership is actually proceeding at 5 knots, and we have to launch the rescue boat, and it has to be towed by its tender in the water at 5 knots. So if your lead for your painter is too far forward and too close to the bow, this actually drags the rescue boat into the bow of the boat and can be incredibly dangerous. So we have had occasions where we've been involved in projects later on, and those types of arrangements have actually been very difficult to become certified because they're just too dangerous to operate. And this is supposed to be a safety feature of the vessel. So if the safety feature is not even safe in itself, definitely something that we need to consider.
Yeah, and I think that's the main thing. Again, you know, we talk about it quite regularly in these coffee breaks, is about having that discussion early on. I mean, the items that you're looking at, lifeboats, MES systems, rescue boats, they're all big pieces of equipment. So they are all going to take up a lot of space. You know, some of them venture into the owner's areas, some of them venture into crew areas, whatever it may be. But having that discussion with your flag, with your class, with us, to make sure that where you're putting them or where you think is suitable actually is suitable, meets the requirements of the rules. You know, like launching your rescue boats. If you see some of the videos out there, they're really dangerous. So getting that positioning right, being able to get the painters down to various decks, whatever it may be, are all points that you may not have thought about before. So again, early on in the design, if we're moving these big bits of kit around, is a lot safer and easier to do in those early stages.
I think not only the location of the equipment itself, but we have to consider that davit launch life raft cranes, the launching appliance for the lifeboat, and the launching appliance for the rescue boat all have to have their own stored power as well. So that takes up space. So stored mechanical power can take the form of large banks of nitrogen bottles. The code also allows for large battery banks, but all of these require space. So not only are we losing deck space, but adjacent interior accommodation space also needs to be taken to find room for the storage of this stored mechanical power. Ben also mentioned that we are starting to encroach on the owner's areas, and we often see davit launch life rafts moving towards the back of the vessel, being incorporated into the kind of the bulwarks or seating areas. But we also need to be aware, when we do that, we are going to be restricted in the material types that we can use in these areas. So we have to risk assess and follow the IMO circular. We'll flash it up on the screen now. We have to follow the guidelines here that will dictate what type of material we can actually use on the construction of the actual furniture, the decking, the linings, even sometimes the paintwork needs to be considered. So as a result of that, it can have a huge impact on an owner's area. So if you're looking to put life-saving appliances into an owner's space, there's going to be knock-on effects on what actual end materials and things that we can actually use.
Yeah, and even just down to the simple thing of aesthetics. You know, we've seen a lot where it looks really good and the owners will be very happy with the current design, but then when you talk to people who are actually going to operate these systems, you know, bearing in mind that all of these davit cranes, you know, rescue boat cranes, they have to go through a regular maintenance schedule. How they're actually operated is a key point. So yeah, these are all things that you should just take into account.
That's great. Well, thank you, Ben. Thanks for talking to us about the regulations involved here today. Thank you for joining us. As ever, if you have any topics or questions, then our contact details will be posted after the video. Get in touch. We can answer these questions on this subject or anything else that you'd like to pose to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.